So after you won your fourth Stanley Cup in 5 years, what's the shocking news your dad ends up telling you that night?
Obviously, we were the best team that year, and we basically won 4 straight in the final, and we had a really strong, solid group of guys. Fortunate enough to play with so many Hall of Famers and so many great unselfish players, and it was exciting. And to win the 4th time, it never gets monotonous, although we were saying, well, this is something we could get used to. And so we had, I think we had like a big family, friends, team sort of get-together dinner. And it was at that point in time my dad sort of whispered in my ear that there had been talk that, teams were maybe going to trade for me. And I thought he's out of his mind, and I didn't believe that was realistic. And so that was the end of it. And, as the night went on, we went home, and I got a phone call at home. In those days, people had phones in their houses. I had a phone call from the first contract that I was ever offered by Nelson Skalbania, and he asked me how I'd like to become a Vancouver Canuck and be part owner, and I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. So once he made that call, I knew there's some sort of traction to the story, and I knew there was something behind it.
What do you remember from being in the office of the then Kings owner when the Oilers owner calls and doesn't know you're in the office?
No, he basically said I was like every other player, and he was going to trade me because I wasn't going to sign a contract with him, and that sort of probably elevated my level of, okay, we got to move on here, and I'm gonna get traded. At that point in time, like every athlete, you think that you're untouchable in a franchise, but he looked at me as one of 20 players, and I understood that now. At that time, I didn't understand it at all. Business is business, and I felt that, obviously the biggest reason I got traded is that I wouldn't sign an extension, and it wasn't that I wouldn't sign. It was more on the basis of, look, let me play the year out, and at the end of the year, whatever fair market value is, I don't want to go anywhere, quite frankly. And from his side of things, he didn't want that to happen. He said, basically, if you don't sign, I got to move you. At that point in time, obviously, I didn't understand it, partly because I was younger and, quite frankly, didn't understand that side of the business.
And it seemed like you kind of went out of your way to be overly nice with how you handled things in that press conference where the trade was.
Well, because I was treated incredibly well, not only by the organization and not only by ownership and the coaches. They were hard on me. The coaches got to be hard on you. That's what makes you a better athlete. There were some times I wasn't too happy about that, but that's what made me the player I became. But all in all, the memories and the friendships I had and the people I met in Edmonton, the fans I've met, it was hard. It was difficult for when they told me, okay, and we're going to trade him. We basically, he's out of here, and that was difficult for me. It was Glenn Saylor was the one guy though that tried to talk me out of it, and he was the one guy that said I can stop this and I can kill this. Basically stepped in and said all that, but by that point in time, I felt like that ship had sailed.
After you were traded, I think the Oilers owner suggested publicly that your tears in the press conference were fake.
Well, again,
did it bother you?
Sure.
How it
crushed me.
all ended?
Yeah, it crushed me, and probably I said some things about him or to him that crushed him, because the emotions were really high. But he went through a hard, difficult time when he traded me, and he probably knew more than anybody how hard it was going to be. So he's defending himself and his integrity. Now I look back at it, I understand it. I understand where he's coming from. At the time, I didn't have a whole lot of sympathy for it, but at this point in time in my life, I understand the entire package.
To what extent were you surprised by how severe the public reaction
I wasn't
was?
surprised because, Edmontonians treated me like a son. I always say that, Mark Messier is an Edmonton boy and he's their son, and I was from Toronto area and I was their adopted son. I made so many friendships, and I like to think we gave them a lot of great memories. People treated me just incredibly well, and that was the hardest part about leaving, is I was treated so well.
And you received an amazing standing ovation the first time you came back to play the Oilers in Edmonton. What, you said, the hardest thing you ever had to do in hockey was play the Oilers?
Listen, the first game I went back was so difficult. Because first and foremost, the guys on the other team, we'd won championships together. We were best friends together. We saw families grow together. Our parents were all best friends. Secondly, Edmonton's different than most cities, and that's not a big, huge city. So 90% of the games, it was the same people sitting in the same seats. I could look across the ice, and for 4 people sitting there, I saw those same 4 people almost 35 out of 40 games. So they became like friends, not just fans. They became friends. So going in there, and they treated me well, and I like to think I played hard for them, so it was a two-way street. So going in there, I knew it was going to be the hardest thing I ever did. And so the first game was relatively not easy, but it was nice because there was a lot of niceties that went with that first time back. After that, for me, it was the hardest place I ever played in. I hated it, never liked it, never got over it. From the first game to the last shift I played there, I just was never very comfortable at ever being an opponent playing in Edmonton.